We're in Istanbul, and we're on his lovely balcony overlooking the greenery of the spring here in Istanbul, and he is with Marmara University, and we're going to be talking about natural dyes and really the beginning of the natural dye projects in Turkey. And I'll just sort of turn things over to you, Harald.
Yeah, that is a long story, but I will try to make it short. I came first to Turkey in the 60s as a teacher at the German school for natural science, chemistry, biology and physics. And again in the 70s. And you know, teachers have a lot of time and they travel a lot, and we travel a lot in Turkey. We had time to go to the bazaar here. We got interested in carpets. We didn't know anything about carpets. And it didn't take very long time. Then we found out that we liked the old ones and didn't like the new ones. And the main reason was the colors in the new ones were ugly, were too harsh, too bright. And the colors in the real old ones, they were bright too, not faded, not washed out, and we liked the old ones. And in the 60s we started to make a small collection of Caucasian carpets. Later on we changed to the Anatolian carpets. And it was in the mid of the 70s that I got more and more interested how to find out what dyes they used in the old days.
And you were teaching here at the university at that time?
No, at that time at the German school, it's a high school.
Yeah, okay.
At the high school. I was teaching at the high school, and my interest in carpets was a hobby.
Yeah, but you were full-time, you were living here?
Yeah, we were living here, the family was here, two children have been born in Turkey, so we are full in Turkey here. And in the 70s I got more and more interested to find out what they use. We were traveling in the country, tried to ask elderly people what they knew about dyes. It was very little what we got out. And at that time I came in connection with Mr. Helmut Schweppe in Germany, and he developed methods to analyze the dyes in old carpets with an equipment that is not that difficult to use.
His name was Helmut Schweppe?
Helmut Schweppe. He's a chemist.
Yeah. I heard his name, just I think Josephine, I spoke with Josephine the other night and she mentioned his name. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. And he developed a method called thin layer chromatography.
Thin layer chromatography.
You only need one knot out of a carpet, extract the dyes from the wool and put it on the thin layer plate and let it run in a glass of a solution, and then the solution goes up and takes the different components of the colors to a different height. And he had some other special additions to that. So his method was suitable to be used without a big laboratory equipment, but you had to have the experience.
What do you think his initial interest was? I mean, why did he get into this?
He worked at the Badische Anilin- und Solarfabrik, BASF, in Germany, and sometimes this company was asked to analyze old paintings to find out is it old, is it original, is it a fake or not.
Right.
And the colors in old paintings, the oil colors, are sometimes the same as in textiles.
Really?
And he developed these methods to analyze the paintings, and then found out that you can use the similar methods to analyze textiles.
So he wasn't initially a rug person?
No, he was not a rug person, and he published it in some scientific journals, and I got in contact with him, got all his publications, and then I started to work here in this house, in our kitchen, to analyze the first carpets. I bought the equipment, and in a very short time we found out that you can really, with this method, exactly say after an analysis, this carpet has been dyed with madder or with a synthetic dye, this carpet has been dyed with chamomiles or with weld or whatever it is. In '78 there was an international conference in Munich, I think the third of these ICOCs. On this conference I showed a Turkish flat weave where I had analyzed all the colors in it, and I showed that you can do the same colors, the same dyes, when you use the same plants or animals. So in this sample it was shown, if you analyze the dyes in a textile and you find out what plants and animals have been used, you can re-dye it and do the same colors as they had done it 100 years or 200 years ago.
So you can duplicate the old colors.
Yeah, so duplicate the old colors, and the knowledge you get by analyzing the old colors is better than the knowledge you get when asking people who don't know anything, and who then start to tell fairy tales.
Make up stories.
Yeah, they don't want to make you unhappy, so they start to tell something that's not true.
Absolutely. And I guess my impression is that so much of this information was lost.
Yeah,
I mean,
a lot was lost, and they could remember a little bit, and many things are told are not true. For instance, they all tell you about saffron.
yes.
Saffron yellow, and we found out that there is saffron in Turkey and still cultivated, used for medical to produce medical medicines, and we never up to now found saffron in carpets. It was too costly. It was a spice.
Yeah. And probably the idea is that this is the color of saffron, so that developed that way.
When I returned to Munich to 78, then I got a grant from the German Research Society. I could buy a better equipment, started went on with my research, and in 78 I had the idea, we know now 80% about the plants and dyes used in old carpets. We know where the plants grow in Turkey. We traveled a lot, thousands of kilometers, to find the places with the help of Turkish botanists from the Istanbul University. And I developed the idea together with my wife Renate to reintroduce it in Turkey. So, but I could not do it as a teacher at the German school. I switched to the German Development Service. And in 81, I returned to Turkey, not as a teacher at the German school. I was engaged by the Marlborough University. At that time it was a school for applied art, but that doesn't matter. And that was a platform from where we could start the practical work.
Right.
At first we thought we could teach students, and the students would just spread out all over Anatolia and teach the villages. But then you find out that students coming from Istanbul, they don't like to go to Anatolia, they don't like to the villages. So immediately in 81, my wife and I, with support of Turkish government, visited the first village. We knew from our travels that these villages had a good weaving tradition. And there we gave dye informations.
Which village was that?
That was the village Süleyman, the villages around Ayvacık.
Yes.
The first village was Çınarpınar, the other village was Süleymanköy, and we did it in up to 10 villages in summer 81. And in September 81, the first carpet was woven, the first what we now call DOBAG carpet. And then it developed itself. It became bigger and bigger, and we had to look for a market. A Turkish governor of the area got interested. A cooperative has been founded at that time.
I want to ask you a question. I remember you were kind enough to take me on one of your trips to Ayvacık, and also I think we went into the Yunta area also. I think that was in the mid-80s, and I don't know, it was 80s.
No, it was the beginning 80s.
Yeah.
Your trip with you was in the mid-80s, and we started this in 81 and 82.
Yeah, right. And I remember at the time you told me that the only reason that we have these weavers still weaving in Turkey today is because they can't do anything else.
Yeah, these areas where weaving was still going on are, by the agricultural point of view, very pure areas. There's a very limited possibilities for agriculturists to dry and to rocky. They have their sheep, their flocks, and what they do in this time, when the family enlarges, they all to the big towns.
Yeah.
To Istanbul and to Izmir and to other towns like Manisa, not that far away. There was a big migration from these villages to the big towns.
And that's a problem for cities like Istanbul today, that's really overcrowded.
Yeah.
These people can't seem to find employment in the towns that they live in the villages that they live in, and so they just move out. And what you've done is help them.
And what we promised, not knowing the market really, we said you get double the price what you get for a chemical dyed carpet. And that was just from the beginning we did it. We raised some money, we had local bazaars at the faculty and in Istanbul, and we saw these carpets sell. And so on this price level, which was much higher than the normal Turkish price level for carpets, we continued to and produced more and more, but on the basis of the cooperative.
Is that pretty much true? You're able to get double the price on the market?
Yeah. We double the price of the market, and people in the villages, they want to know when we do all these work, it's much more difficult and time-consuming to dye with natural dye with plants than just to put some powder in the pot and have the dye in 5 minutes.
Right.
Then they want to get something out.
That's sure.
And they need more money, and they get it, and that works.
Well, it's an incentive for them to do the proper weaving, to in fact continue with the weaving at all.
Yeah. And it was not a big problem with the designs, because we found out that the designs still exist in these villages, but on a very poor level. The number of knots was down to 40,000 of 1 square meter, and one of the things what we introduced in the beginning was that all the payment was related to the number of knots, not to the square meters or square feet. And by itself, the number of knots increased double, and when the number of knots is higher, you can put in more details in the carpets. Right. The whole designs became more elaborate.
That's working, because the system that had existed before you came into this, I believe, was paying the weaver per square meter of carpet, and that encourages the weaver to make coarser and coarser carpets.
Yeah, coarse yarn, put in a lot of wefts to make a square meter in a very short time.
It reminds me of a funny thing with the American Indian Navajo when they were weaving these rugs in the early 1900s. The dealers would buy the blankets by the pound.
Yeah.
So that they were the coarsest, they're called pound blankets. Yeah. And so that not only were they very, very coarse, but they would actually put sand and mud in them.
Yeah, not washed, to get the weight.
Weight it down. Yeah. So you pretty much get what you pay for, I guess.
Yeah. And that system, paying by the number of knots, that works.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the 80s, then we established from the university relation to these cooperatives. We have contracts with the cooperatives. These contracts say that the university supports the cooperatives to reintroduce the dyes, to control the dyes, and to give some technical assistance too. On the contrary, on the other hand, the cooperatives pay 4% from their turnover to the university. So by this way they get their service. So that is not supported anymore by government funds.
Yeah,
In the beginning, both cooperatives, we have a second one in Junta, got funds, one from the German government and the other from the Turkish state, low interest loans with a very low interest rate, so that they could first produce a certain amount of carpet to have a stock, and then try to go on the market.
So pretty much they're self-sustaining.
Yeah, self-sustaining, and now they have quite a lot of money on the banks.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And this money, of course, it belongs to the members of the cooperative. There's profit sharing every year.
Yeah.
That depends on the carpets which have been sold, and the weavers find out in a very short time what carpets sell and what carpets don't sell. So the quality is going on step by step.
So in a little more than 10 years, I guess.
Yeah, a little about 10 years, and some other interesting aspects. When we came to the village and made the first carpet, we had with us madder from a German pharmacy.
Really?
Then we found out, of course, madder is growing in Turkey. We showed it to the villages, and they started to collect madder from the corner of their fields.
And it was there all the time?
All the time, and a survey made by the Turkish Agriculture Service found out that there is a lot of so-called wild madder, but the same madder which has been cultivated last century, in areas where they cultivate now cotton. These areas had been the areas for cultivating madder in the last century.
And that madder was raised in the last century for a commercial dye?
Yeah, commercial dyes. It was exported all over the world. The Turkish madder was famous, and then when the synthetic dyes came up, the market collapsed totally, and the madder farmers changed to be cotton farmers. But the madder is a weed. Even a short piece of root makes a new plant. So they could not get rid, in nearly 100 years, rid of this madder.
Not even if they wanted to.
If they wanted, and now they make double money. They collect the roots of madder, and they, of course, they have the cotton.
That's amazing.
And since the mid of the 80s, there is a market for madder in Turkey again. Really? Yeah, there are madder merchants,
No.
In the beginning, the villagers collected the madder by itself. Now it's organized. They go to village, and then we buy madder, and then some persons start to collect it and manage it and organize it. And now the cooperatives have tons of dried madder.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And there seems to be an inexhaustible supply.
Yeah, we have tried to cultivate madder. We have experience with that, but up to now it's not necessary. Cultivated madder would be much more expensive than this madder collected.
Just wild madder.
Yeah.
How long do you think, I mean, back in the 19th century and before, that madder, the source of the red, was called Turkey red, I believe.
Yeah, Turkey red is a special red what the Turks dyed on cotton.
Really?
Yeah, that made the flags, and that is a very complicated procedure because cotton doesn't take madder that easy as wool does. The Turkish red is madder red on cotton.
In fact, you can see it in the flag, perhaps.
Yeah, the flags. Yeah, the flags. No, it's cotton.
Yeah, and it's that particular shade of red that's a little warm, I guess.
Yeah, a little bit warmer.
How long did they? How long have they cultivated? 19th century and before. How long do you think it goes back?
Oh, I think it goes back very, very long time. It is known from Europe that madder was cultivated in the 7th, 8th century, but the madder plant has come from the Mediterranean. And madder was known to the Greeks, and madder was known to the Egyptians. But the madder plant has never developed a cultivated species. Rubia tinctorum, what we call the normal madder plant, is growing wild, and it has been cultivated, but has not developed in other species.
It's just one species?
Yeah, one species. There are other species of this family growing wild, but they don't have that much amount of dye stuff in the roots, and some of these grow in rocky areas. Very difficult to get the roots. And Rubia tinctorum needs good soil, and there it is easy to dig out the roots.
Now, the color red, we call it color red, but what colors do we get from madder? I mean,
we get different colors from madder. We get this brilliant red from madder, what I have here in my hand, and when we use the bars again, we get a lighter red. That is this here.
Yeah, they call that second water.
Yeah, second water, second red, and we get violet from madder. That is a story, quite a long story too. In the old books, they tell you that violet, well known in Turkish carpets and kilims of the 19th, 18th, 17th century, that this violet is a mixture of madder and blue indigo.
Right.
We analyzed it, and we couldn't find indigo. There was no indigo in it. We found in this violet only the dye ingredients known from madder roots, known from the red. And it took quite a time to find out how they did it. And that was Josephine Powell, this American researcher and photographer. Yeah, she found the right way.
Really?
Yeah. And then, of course, we followed.
Yeah.
She thought the violet has been made even by Jureks. And they have not a very developed dye equipment. So the method should be very simple.
Yes.
And the method, you have to think simple.
Yes.
And that thinking simple, she found the way, and in a very short time we knew how it has been made.
Interesting.
And the main thing is the mordant is iron, that is no secret. And the other thing is it's not necessary to heat.
Don't heat it.
Don't heat. But there are some other tricks.
And it stays in the bath a very long time.
It stays in the bath, and you need an awful lot of madder powder.
Really?
But you can this bath use again.
And you need a lot of madder powder because this if I'm not mistaken, this contains about 20 different dye materials. Is that,
the madder root, the old root, has up to 20 different dye ingredients or dye stuffs, as what you call it. And the younger ones have only 3 or 4.
Really? And so when you're pulling out a purple out of the mixture, you would naturally need a lot more root.
And the mixture of red and blue indigo to obtain purple, that the purple doesn't come out nice. It looks dirty. So purple is a dye without indigo.
It's a cleaner purple.
Yeah, cleaner purple. And it contains only the dye ingredients what the red contains too, but in a different relation. and the modern is different.
Can you do anything with the water after you've gotten the purple?
Yeah, you can use it and obtain again this red.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so in the beginning you need a lot
Yeah.
of metal powder, but then you can use the bath 2 times and 3 times. At the end it doesn't come out that expensive.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I see the yellow here.
Yeah.
And that must be dye stuff.
Yeah, there are many plants all over the world, in Turkey at least 20, which you can use to produce yellow. But there are very few which give you a light fast yellow.
From a different.
And the light fasted yellow comes from a plant called in Turkey muhabbetice, and in United States they call it weld. Weld. And weld gives the brightest and light fastest yellow. We know that because we analyzed the old carpets in the Museum of Turkish and Islamist Art, where the yellow in the lottos and the ushaks, even after 400 years, has not faded, only a little bit mellowed.
Yes.
And all this yellow contains the dye ingredient luteolin from weld. The Latin name for weld is Reseda luteola. So that is the light fasted yellow. And this dye ingredient luteolin is in chamomiles too. So we use now weld and we use chamomiles to produce yellow, or in combination with blue to produce green.
The chamomile, is that the same as the tea, the chamomile tea?
Yeah, there are different types and better ones. We have the dyer's chamomile with really yellow flowers.
Yes.
We have the daisies which have yellow and white flowers.
Yeah.
The best is the dyer's chamomile, but you can use the daisies too. They make a good yellow, and when you add some madder, then you get a golden yellow. And there are some other tricks to have a really nice golden yellow, and not such a strong lemon yellow.
It might look to some people like an aniline dye.
And it looks an aniline dye.
Yeah, I know that's the trouble with some.
In the beginning we used onion skins, but that's now forbidden because the yellow from onion skin doesn't last very long.
Really? That's you probably have found that wasn't used in the past so much.
Yeah, it has been used. There are old carpets and old kilns where really the yellow has faded.
I see.
For instance, in the area for Fethi, south west Turkey, the yellow fades. There they use spurge. And spurge has the same dye ingredient as onion skins.
I see.
Yeah.
That leaves the color, the blue, that when composed with yellow gives green. But let's talk about the blue color a little bit, because that's a different compound a little bit. That's not a mordant dye. So
no, that is a wet dye, as they call it.
Wet dye.
And there are plants in all over the world which contain not indigo, but something that is several juicy indigo when it goes through a fermentation process. And we have in Turkey a plant with the Latin name Isatis. And we have in India a plant that is Indigofera tinctoria. India, I think the Indians started and very early to produce out of the shrub. There are places in Pakistan and Mohenjo-Daro, 1,000 years old, and you find pots opposite dust, and there are traces of indigo in it.
Really?
So they in India they started to produce indigo to dye. Yeah.
That's what, 4,000 years ago?
Yeah, that's 4,000 years ago. And from really pure indigo has been depleted over the world.
Yeah.
I think early to Turkey. In Europe and the European, it came to producing indigo, which produced from this plant called Isatis tinctoria, specific name and with English name. The indigo coming from India was much better. Many farms, but must produce indigo from woad, and they would get bankrupt. This free competition. There were laws to use indigo, but this forbidden didn't function. The best practice, we find it.
And of course, just so everybody knows, it's the blue gems.
Yeah, and it's nearly 90 years ago that chemists in Germany at the Badische Anilin and Soda Fabrik BSF succeeded to put indigo from charcoal tar used to make that indigo, which has formula as natural indigo. The same, may say it's rebuilt natural indigo.
100. So that years ago.
100 years ago, end of the last century, this factory started to produce synthetic indigo, but it is natural. It's the same as indigo. Your eye cannot see a difference, and when you analyze it, you don't see a difference.
I see. So it's that block, that sort of blue rock.
Blue rock, yeah. And when you just put up your genes, it is dyed with synthetic indigo, and this indigo has the same formula as natural indigo.
Yeah, and it's got that. It's got the same blue color.
The blue color, and it's a brush in it.
Exactly. Yeah,
that's what people like.
That same quality of rubbing off and.
This factory in Germany, they wanted to close down their production of indigo after the Second World War because they thought that it's an old-fashioned dye stuff, and we have modern ones, they are better. But then there came the blue jeans wave up to now, and that is one of the factories which makes profit every year by producing indigo.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, interesting.
And do they supply most of the world?
Yeah, most of the world. I think there are some factories in France too, maybe in other countries too. Maybe I'm not up to date with my information, but most of the indigo is produced by BASF.
Interesting.
And all jeans, real jeans, should be dyed with indigo.
It has that sort of almost luminescent blue that you see in the carpet here.
Yeah.
Last week I was in Konya, and I drove down to Karaman to see Michael Bishop. And you know Michael, I'm sure.
Yes, I know him.
And it's very interesting what he's doing with these indigo plants, these woad plants. I mean, he has so many of them growing in his garden, and that kind of thing. And he seems to be able to pull different colors out of the woad plants. For example, he pulls blue, of course. He also is able to get a very nice purple and a yellow that looks not too much unlike that.
Yeah, the leaves of this plant woad, they contain yellow dye stuffs, and you can dye yellow with this. And the leaves contain another ingredient which turns imitation to indigo. And it's nice that we have efforts now to get indigo from woad again.
He was saying, I think he said that the best blue comes from indigo that you get from some particular woad plant, and if it's handled through the fermentation process, you get the best color blue, versus using synthetic indigo and using hydrosulfide or some other chemical.
Yeah, it's a point of discussion.
Yeah.
Some people say that they see even the difference by looking with their eyes on the blue. Other people don't see it. But there are other places in the world where now indigo is produced out of plants. I was in March in Japan, and in Japan is another plant. It's a polygonum, not related to the woad and not related to the shrub indigofera in India. It's another plant, and there's still up to now a very successful indigo dyeing in Japan using this local plant.
I've seen some Japanese textiles, 19th century. I think they were indigo dyed, double ikai.
Yeah.
They were some part of the tradition.
They do it up to now.
Yeah.
And they have a growing market for this.
Interesting. Growing market.
Yeah, growing market. And then the other plants in the world which have been used, and there are movements to use these plants again. And I could think that we even in Turkey, when the research goes on, that we could use again indigo from woad, but you need an awful lot of leaves to get the indigo out of it.
Just because there's not much there.
Yeah.
So you.
And I know a German. He is a farmer. He has a vineyard, and as a hobby, he obtains indigo from woad too, and he made a carpet with indigo from woad. But he says that you really don't see the difference between synthetic indigo and natural indigo. No?
Yeah, I mean, I imagine it's pretty difficult.
Yeah.
It's nice to have people out there like Michael, who is right up there doing research. I mean, and trying to separate, getting the different, saying one is a little bit better, one is a little bit different, and you need that kind of information, whether it can ever be used commercially or not. Is another.
No,
story.
there's now a movement all over the world to look again for natural dyes
Yeah.
and to dye textiles with natural dyes.
Mm-hmm.
Something what we are now doing in Turkey, interested in, to look for dye insects, bugs.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We succeeded to find the famous kermes, Mediterranean kermes.
Yes, because that's something that we didn't know if it really existed or
Yeah,
not. I mean,
yeah. I will, if you don't mind, I will just get
Please do.
something of this kermes.
Now, the color we're talking about is, it's rather than an orange red, we're talking about a dye stuff that's a cool red, that's more of a blue red. And traditionally, you know, in the 19th century, it's considered to be from cochineal, for example, or which was raised in the Americas. It was raised, the Spaniards found it being raised in the Americas. And then the other one, common one, would be lac, I guess, raised in
Lac
India.
comes from India.
Yeah, and that's more or less the same color. I don't know if it's the same composition.
No, the composition is different, but it's more or less the same color.
Yeah.
No?
And this other, this kermes beetle is something different now.
The kermes is known from the old records, from the Greek and Romans. They used kermes.
Uh-huh.
And there is a very famous textile, the robe of the German emperors, the Hohenstaufen robe, made about 1100 in Sicilia. This has been analyzed with a brilliant red on silk, and this red contains the dye ingredients from Kermes vermilion, the Mediterranean kermes. That was a bug soaking on the special kind of oak around the Mediterranean.
Oh, the oak, is it a Bologna oak?
Yeah, no, that is the kermes oak. An evergreen oak. It's an oak known from the Maquis and all around the Mediterranean. And it was thought that this kermes had disappeared. There is a French researcher, Mrs. Dominique Cardon. She found in France again kermes, and she knows a lot about kermes. And when we heard about her, we invited her to come to Turkey. And in '89, we succeeded to find again kermes in Turkey.
Yeah, these look like little berries.
Yeah, no, they look like berries, but they are not berries. They are round like berries. They don't move anymore. They sit on the oak and soak. They have no eyes. They have no legs. They sit there.
No, you don't mean it. Really.
Yeah, and you have to train your eye to find them.
But it's it's a beetle.
It's a beetle. It's a very small beetle.
Yeah.
It survives during winter as a very small animal, and then in spring it starts to soak the oaks, and it grows. And end of May and beginning June, it's big, and then you can collect it.
Interesting.
We traveled down from the Dardanelles to the Syrian border at that time, and we found just hundreds of these bugs. That is to dye just 100 gram or 150 gram of silk, not very much. And then in the DOBAG cooperatives, I gave an award.
Yes.
If you find these bug, for the first bug, I give you 20,000 Turkish lira. I don't know how many dollars it was. They found one. And then I gave another award. If you bring a tea glass, I will bring this certain amount of, pay this certain amount of money. And with a very short time, we had about 4 kilo of kermes collected by the villagers.
Amazing.
And I promised to pay and on my own pocket, and I paid this to the poor villagers.
Could I see one?
Yeah, 4,000 mark.
Oh no! Oh, that's enough. That's enough.
Yeah.
They're very light.
Very light, and you need a lot to.
I'm going to put most of them back. I just want to take a couple out of here.
Yeah.
They look just like little berries.
Yeah, like little berries. Put it on your hand and you see it better. Look like berries.
Or like a You know, also they look like a tick, the swollen. You know, tick swells. When they're very small, I mean, they're like little mites. I guess.
Yeah, little mites, and you can see it's difficult to collect them.
Yeah.
But they succeeded, and they did it.
And can I crush this?
Yeah, you can crush it. Yeah.
Yeah, it just pops, and
Yeah.
it's red.
It's red.
It's sort of like something you might eat in the bazaar. I mean.
We know from the old records that the Ottomans collected it. The villagers had to bring it as a kind of, what do you say it? They had to give
Like
it to the court.
Like a tariff. or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, like a tax.
Tax, yes.
Yeah, and they had to bring it to the court, and the Ottomans, we think, used it for textiles, silk textiles. The silk textiles, on silk, this bark makes a very brilliant red. If you like, we'll just take out a silk textile to show it
Yeah,
to you.
it'd be nice.
Yeah.
It'd be nice. You know, I have some cochineal beetles, and they're a little different. They appear to make
Yeah, they
stronger red.
Yeah, they make a stronger red. Huh? Yeah, this is a silk scarf dyed with camas vermilio, with this Mediterranean camas. It's the most beautiful color you can think of.
It really is
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah. It's a bluish red,
Yeah.
a cold red. And what we do now, that we try to obtain very nice colors on silk,
Yeah.
and we will use these bugs for silk dyeing. On wool, it's not that interesting, and we know that camas obviously has not been used to dye wool.
Really.
It
So
was
it's just
too expensive. Maybe it was not allowed. It was only for the kings, for the sultans, for the pashas.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
This is this used with an alum mordant? Is it done the same way?
Yeah,
as
yeah.
as-
It is used with alum mordants, but you need a lot of camas, the same weight as the silk has.
Oh, really?
And you have to use the camas bugs.
So that's a lot of bugs.
It's a lot of bugs, so these scarves will not be very cheap, but they are unique.
Well, they're beautiful scarves.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
that
yeah.
color, I don't think you can really get that color any
No,
other way.
no, it is difficult.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
And the silk, the silk is made in China, I suppose.
Yeah, the silk is made in China. You could even when you buy silk in Turkey, there is Turkish silk too, but this was Chinese silk. That doesn't make any difference.
Yeah, yeah. But it's the color that we're trying to get.
And there's another bug which is known from the area from the Ararat, from Armenia, the so-called Ararat camas or the Armenian camas.
That's northeastern Turkey, I guess it would be.
Yeah, it was known up to recently only from Armenia. And there is some research in Armenia on these bugs. In 1990,
That's okay, you can
yeah,
come in. You
yeah.
can come in.
I traveled to the eastern Turkey, and there I found these bugs in eastern Turkey too. So it's not only in Armenia. That is interesting. This bug lives on the roots.
On the roots?
Roots of a grass, on the slopes of the Ararat, of the salty areas, down to the river Araxes.
Yeah.
And there are only some weeks in September, early morning after sunrise, these bugs come out to the surface
Oh, they're under the ground.
and running around to find another plant to go again into the earth to put the eggs down. And that is the time where you can try to collect these.
Interesting.
I did it with the help of villagers.
Yeah.
So this is the first Ararat camas from Turkey.
So it produces about the same color.
No, it does not. Ararat camas unfortunately doesn't produce a very deep red. It's all the time a pink red, pinkish red.
Pink.
We
Yeah,
have
not as
no,
intense as this.
not it comes close to that, but has not the brilliant color as camas vermilio.
And this looks about the same. Could I?
Yeah, yeah. It is a little warm. This animal. Now they are all dried.
Yeah, just one or two.
Yeah, I have to tell you the story.
That's good.
Normally, the Mediterranean camas is killed by putting the camas into vinegar.
I see.
And we tried the same with Harald camas. But they came out alive, even after 2 days in 15% vinegar. They were very fresh and started again to run around. Then we tried DDT.
Really? Oh, that's terrible.
The DDT, and even they don't mind to have a lot DDT in that. They survive. The only thing what helps at the end is to kill these poor animals with heat. And then it smells like a kebab, because there's a lot of fat in it.
I see.
Yeah. I sent one amount of these collected bugs from eastern Turkey by bus here to my wife Renate. And when she opened the glass, all the bugs came out. She tried the same thing to kill them with vinegar. It did not succeed. They were all over the balcony. And when I came back, she was desperate because she couldn't kill these animals.
That's very funny.
Yeah.
They look like they have a deeper color.
Yeah, they have a deeper color, but there's another dye ingredient in it as in Mediterranean camas. It's the same in it as in cochineal.
I see.
But cochineal from Mexico has 30 times more of these dye ingredient called carminic acid. And therefore cochineal from Mexico is superior to Harald camas.
Yeah, and of course it's a bigger beetle. It's about the size of my
and
fingernail here.
And the cochineal from Mexico doesn't contain fat. This contains fat, and this fat disturbs the dye process.
Yeah, I can feel the grease. It's a little greasy.
Yeah, it's greasy.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah, it's very sort of slippery.
Yeah. We now found out by analyzing the famous kaftans of the sultans in the Topkapi Museum that cochineal from Mexico obviously has been used very early in Turkey to dye these brocades, these silks for the sultan kaftans.
Very early. So what time would that be?
Mexico became known to the old world in 1523.
Yes.
And there are records that few years ago the Spains traded cochineal from Mexico to Spain. It came from Spain to Venice, and from Venice with the merchants in a very short time here to Constantinople.
Sure. And it was a very expensive dye
Yeah,
stuff.
and of course this dye stuff found its way to the places where they made luxury textiles.
Of course.
And the most luxury textiles have been made at that time in Bursa, in Constantinople, by the Ottoman Turks, by the Ottoman workshops.
And that'll produce a red that's
it's deeper.
a deeper red.
It's deeper here.
About the same colors, but
Much deeper.
much more saturated.
Yeah.
And even if you had more of these beetles, could you come close to that color?
No, you cannot. You cannot. The cochineal is so superior that it replaced in a very short time lac from India. It obviously replaced the Mediterranean camas too. We did not find Mediterranean camas up to now in sultan kaftans, even not in the 15th century. They used other camas. And I think that Harald camas has been used only locally. And the workshops of the sultans and the Shah in Iran, I think they used imported cochineal.
It's interesting the use of these different colors. Madder on one hand being a kind of a warmer red.
Yeah.
Some people would say a hot red, and cochineal on the other hand being a cool red, in a sense almost a more formal red.
That was the red of the kings and the cardinals and the sultans.
Yeah.
Right? And I think they want to have a different red from the normal people.
I'll tell you an interesting story I was reading in a book about dyes that the British redcoats, up until the 19th century, they used to wear these redcoats until they found that they made them very good targets for other people.
Yeah.
But the officers made the red coats out of cochineal, and the enlisted men had red coats out of turkey red, which was madder.
Yeah, that was madder. Yeah.
And it was, of course, a cheaper dye.
Yeah. That was for the upper class insect dye, and for the poor, for the peasants and the soldiers, there was matter.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
And I imagine that at a distance you could distinguish between the two.
Yes, you can. You can immediately.
Yeah.
When we look at textiles now, we get a lot of samples.
Mm-hmm.
Since some years, we have a nice laboratory for natural dyes at Marmara University.
Mm-hmm.
We get samples from all over the world to analyze these samples. For instance, we got samples from the famous Pasarek carpet.
That's interesting. I'd like to talk about that.
Yeah.
Tell us the story about that. John Thompson was involved in that. And
Yeah, I think you know it's not necessary to tell here about the Pasarek carpet. It's the oldest carpet of the world.
It's good to mention a little bit.
Yeah,
People may not be familiar.
Yeah,
with
has come out of the ice in Siberia
Yeah.
and was in the ice for 2,500 years and discovered, I think, by Rudenko in 1947.
So it dates from about the 5th century BC.
Yeah,
does it?
5th century BC, a very elaborated carpet with an interesting design. It's now in the Hermitage in St. Petersburg, not Leningrad anymore.
Yeah.
John Thompson succeeded to get one knot from the red of this
That must have
carpet.
taken a lot of talking.
Yeah, a lot of talking. And on the other hand, he got more samples from the felt,
Yes.
which came from the same tube.
Right.
And the felt had different shades of red too.
And the felt was also a kind of a rug or floor covering, or was
No,
it some other kind of?
no, the felt had designed, application designs,
Yeah.
very nice designs with different colors, with blue and red and yellow.
Yes.
And we got, John Thompson got samples from all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And the theory about the Pasarek carpet is it has been made not in Siberia because the people there are too primitive, they cannot do it.
Right.
It has been imported from Iran or from the Ararat area where the Armenians later lived and where we know this Ararat kermes. And it was now interesting to analyze the red in the carpet and the red in the felt.
Yes.
And we found out that in both reds, in the carpet and the felt, a kind of kermes has been used, what is called polished kermes.
Polished.
Polished kermes, but it's kermes found not only in Poland, it's found in Russia and obviously in Siberia too. And the result was when they used kermes for the felt too, the same kermes, polished kermes, and they have it in the carpet too, that both can be locally made. There's no doubt about that the felt was locally.
Sure.
And when the carpet has the same dye ingredient, that the carpet can be locally made too. That was the result.
Interesting. So it doesn't necessarily come from the Armenian?
No, and because it does not contain Armenian kermes, that is quite sure.
I see.
Yeah.
I
And
see.
when it has been made in the area of the Ararat, the later Armenia, then it should contain the local dye,
Of course.
but it didn't.
Of course,
Huh?
of course. So the idea is that they were very proficient carpet weavers in that area.
Yeah, no, that is one of the theories we can now support.
And it didn't necessarily have to come
No.
from the areas that we know of
No,
as
no.
the famous carpet
Yeah.
areas.
The design is related to Achemenidian and design. There is no doubt about that, but it could have been made in that area.
Mhm. And that was the red component was a kind of kermes. Was there any sample taken of any of the other colors, or was probably not necessary?
Yeah, yeah. And these just mentioned polished kermes was a famous dye ingredient or dye stuff too. We analyzed here in the Topkapi Museum the kaftan of Sultan Mehmed II, the conqueror of Istanbul.
Yes.
And this kaftan, that is the time before Cochonet had come from Mexico to Europe.
Right.
This kaftan
So
is
before
dyed with
1500.
before 1500, is dyed with polished kermes too.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So that must have come
From Eastern Europe, we know now that it was collected, organized by Jews in Poland and in the Ukraine, and there were Turkish and Armenian merchants trading polished kermes almost all over the world.
and that has a very high percentage of carminic acid, a very high.
Carminic acid and kermes acid.
And kermes
And
acid.
kermes acid. Therefore, you can, after having analyzed it, you can say this is dyed with polished kermes because it contains both carminic acid and kermes acid, and the relation, the amounts of both is very important, and that is typical. A special relation between these two compounds is typical for polished kermes.
How does that compare with cochineal as far as the dye stuff goes? Just
Yeah, it is inferior to cochineal,
yeah.
because cochineal contains so much more.
Yeah.
And polished kermes has been used only locally up to the beginning of the 19th century, and then it stopped.
Yeah, yeah. I know. I have a friend that's involved in weaving, trying to get the weavers in Bolivia to go back to weaving some of the original textiles, and trying to get them to go back to using their cochineal. It's still being produced for medical dyes and things like that, and you know, they're starting to produce it now down there.
Yeah, and there is still the cultivation on Lanzarote, one of the Canarian islands.
Yes.
You know, this cochineal bark is living on the cactus plant.
Yes.
They produce it, and Campari, this red alcoholic, should be dyed with cochineal. It is real Campari.
Really?
And lipsticks are dyed with cochineal too. Some of those are dyed with cochineal. Still, yeah, sad.
Because that's a very nice red.
Yeah, it's a very nice red. Yeah.
Interesting. Because the lipsticks today have so many colors from black to.
And the production on the Canadian islands was so high, and about 1860-70, they exported a lot even to Turkey. And that's a time where cochineal comes into village rugs and nomadic weavings.
Kilums and things like that.
Kilums like that. It's last century. It came very early to the luxury textiles of the Ottoman sultans, and when it was cheap enough and available, it came into the products of the peasants and nomads too.
So, I mean, in the bazaar, you people really don't like to see cochineal.
Yeah, that is, you know, I have written a book with my friend Brüggemann in the 80s about rugs of the peasants and nomads in Turkey, and there I mentioned, if you find cochineal in a village rug, then this carpet has been produced in the second half or middle of the last century, because that relates to the production of the Canadian islands. We know that big amounts of tons came to Turkey at that time. So now collectors think a carpet with cochineal is late. But on the other hand, in the meantime, we found out that the cochineal was traded earlier, for instance, to Aleppo, and there are records that the Turkmens, having their winter pasture around Aleppo, that they bought for their weavings cochineal in Aleppo, and that this source dates from 1811. Really? So that relates very good to our experience at kilns from that area, the so-called Rehane kilns, which contain a lot of cochineal. They could be older. That could be first half 19th century.
But not any earlier than that, probably.
Yeah, maybe earlier too, but not that early. Then it was too expensive.
Even though, did they produce madder in that area?
Yeah, they produce the madder too.
Because in your book you say something about eastern Turkey, of course, the more mountainous and the cooler regions. It was difficult to produce madder, so they tended to use more.
I think Aleppo was a very important trading place for cochineal on the route to Iran, and from Aleppo the use of cochineal spread out to eastern Turkey.
That brings up another dye, indigo sulfonic acid. Because the dates are roughly similar to cochineal.
Yeah, a little bit earlier. If you treat, I have to explain something about indigo sulfonic acid. If you treat indigo with sulfonic acid, then you get another blue dye called indigo sulfonic acid. And to dye with this dye is much easier than to dye with indigo. Indigo needs a wet dyeing process. If you have indigo sulfonic acid, you just put the wool in the pot with indigo sulfonic acid, heat it, and the wool comes out, is dyed. But the disadvantage is that these blue dye runs out.
Yes, it does.
It does, especially when you wash with soap. When you wash with something what is alkalic,
Yes.
like soap.
An alkali, yes.
Yeah, alkaline, that takes it out. So indigo sulfonic is a blue that runs sometimes. But if you use a mordant when you dye with indigo sulfonic, then it's really fast and doesn't run.
So it can be a good dye.
It can be a good dye.
You also can get a very deep blue color?
No, it is not very deep blue. It's all a little bit more harsh than real indigo. Your eye sees it, and you think, oh, it cannot be indigo. It's too strong.
Yes.
So there is a small difference.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
But not very big.
It tends to be a smoother dye because the dye goes into the fibers more.
Yeah, it does. But the dye itself is stronger.
Yeah, yeah. And then it seems, in particular, the late.
Yeah, there's no abrasion in it.
Yeah.
Indigo is on the surface. And it rubs down.
Yeah, which makes it look interesting.
Interesting, and indigo is in the fiber, the dye processors and other dye ingredients too, and there's no abrasion. That is one thing.
And that's something that we need to get back to. Yes.
I think we have some tea now.
Oh, that would be nice. We'll just be nice to have it here.
Yeah.
We haven't really talked about indigo and the problems related to indigo. And in your book, you discuss some of that, the idea that not everybody could, and so often indigo was dyed by one person in the village, perhaps.
And we know, for instance, in Bukhara, that wool has been sent to India for dyeing, and then Jews established a dye house in Bukhara to dye blue with indigo. But on the other hand, we did more research in Anatolia. Now we know that even in villages, people were able to dye with indigo, and specialized dyers. So indigo dyeing out all over the country in Turkey, it was not specialized to special dye houses.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. What's the process of the very rudimentary level of 19th century indigo dyeing in the villages?
They got this indigo, really pure indigo.
Which comes like a blue rock.
Like a blue rock. It contains up to 90% or 80% real indigo dye stuff, and the rest is earth and dirt.
Yeah.
And to make it go into the water, into the dye baths, it has to be broken down. It's a reduction by the chemical point of view.
Yeah.
And what they used was chalk. It was chalk. They used some resin, they used urine and other ingredients. Urine, other ingredients. And then it is reduced, and the blue indigo turns to a yellow dye stuff, and the yellow dye stuff goes into the dye baths. It's only on the surface.
It's a problem of solubility. I guess,
solubility
in the solution.
Yeah.
And you have to reduce it chemically to make it soluble.
Yeah.
And when you do reduce it chemically, it must change a little bit and turn yellow.
Yeah, it is yellow.
Yeah.
And then you can put in the wool. The wool will take this yellow stuff in it. And when you take out the wool out of the wet of the dye bath, on the air, the indigo appears again, because now there is an oxidation.
And the air gets to it, and it slowly changes blue.
And slowly changes blue.
And it's when it was demonstrated to me at one of your villages, it was so fascinating to see the blue coming out of the pot, yellow, green, and blue.
Yeah. At first it comes out yellow, it turns to green. Yeah. Well, I can tell you a nice story which we had with a Turkish television team. They wanted to have the dyeing on television too. Yeah. And then if we started, now we will do the blue. And it came out yellow, and then the lady in charge of the thing, stop. If we want the yellow, the blue and not the yellow, that's wrong. Yeah. And we had to calm her down and just to explain, wait a little bit, moment, will be this announced color we have here.
And to get a very, very deep, some of the old carpets, the 19th century carpets, they have a deep, almost black blue. And with one bath? Or
No, you have to put it into the wet again and again and again and again, and it gets deeper and deeper blue.
Now, in the old days, I mean, 19th century and before, there's a sort of a funny story that they tell about the Navajo weavers who lived a very rudimentary life. I mean, even more rudimentary than the Turkish villages, perhaps. They said that they would take wool and wrap it around a block of this indigo, this blue stuff, and they would have a pot outside behind the house.
Yeah.
And the children, they'd go out in the morning and they'd tell them to pee in the pot.
Yeah.
And this would go on. They'd leave it there for, you know, weeks and weeks.
No, that can work.
Yeah,
It is not impossible.
And they would take it out, and it would be blue on the.
Yeah. That's a very simple method, but
Yeah.
it works in this way, and I believe that that is not a fairy tale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We haven't really talked about the old rug here
Yeah.
we've got.
Yeah, there's an old one here on the table. Take away this scarf. There's an old one, dyed with natural dyes and still a little bit dirty, from the Junta area.
Here we can just bring it right over here.
Yeah.
I think what is the idea that interests people. The DOBAG rugs are made in the same pattern as the old rugs from the same area.
Yeah. In DOBAG we don't copy museum carpet. We looked into the villages, into the mosques, and found a lot of old carpets, and we just said, go on. They had done it up to now. They used the old patterns, but the carpets were coarse and the colors were not nice. The first thing was just to use other colors, and then to look into the mosques and houses and to find more samples of their own tradition. And this is a sample from Junta, from a house. It is about 120 old, it's dirty, and the colors, of course, are a little bit light here by this age. And what the carpet here on the table is one with a similar design.
Yes.
And with the same colors.
You can see, I don't know if the camera picked this up, but you can see the this motif